Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. And this is where we get to the boring part.
Ugh. You thought the law was boring. Talking about how many skins of some unknown animal were on the back of the tabernacle. No, this shit is boring. There is nothing more boring than flattering a neurotic, narcissistic dictator endlessly. I don't know how.
Oh, Lord, you're so mighty. You're just so big.
Gosh, we're all really impressed down here, I can tell you.
Lawrence.
Yes, hola.
What?
Good morning, Hebrews and Shebrews. What a glorious Jewish day.
And what preface would you give to this?
Psalms. Okay, so this, I would say this book, but I'm going to say these books because Psalms is generally broken up into 5 parts. So you have, that was done later. It was done to kind of imitate the Torah divisions. So just like there are 5 books of the Torah, they were like, oh, let's split up the Psalter into 5, and we have 5 Psalters. So we have 5 books of Psalms. And keep in mind that it is a later designation. But when it comes to a lot of this, it's very hard to tell when these were actually written because they're so vague in many places. And while there are certainly some that we can date to a more reasonable degree, for the most part, we really can't date it to any certainty. We can put it in like a range, but sometimes that range is huge. Even some of the Psalms that we're going to be going over today, so like early on, some people have dated some of these Psalms to like obviously the time of David because like his name is attached to them, even though that comes from a later time period. But then you have people who, while not accepting the Davidic dating, they accept a Solomonic one perhaps. And those same Psalms that get like a Solomonic dating, oh shocker, they can also get a post-exilic dating. So the range that these could be is very often enormous.
So
And
somewhere between Robert Johnson and Elvis Presley.
There are some ways that we can approach these texts, and I think we'll be using all these methods here. And hopefully, because Tomer does actually know Hebrew, he can help us out with this one more. So at least when it comes to the actual form of these. So Gunkel in like I think the late 1800s, early 1900s, he produced the form critical approach. So he was taking common themes and forms and helped organize these psalms into categories. So that usually includes stuff like laments, songs of praise, thanksgiving, stuff like that. And you also get like collective and individual laments. So there are a lot of categories. Those are just some examples. Then you have Mo Winkle coming a little bit later, who gave this cultic interpretation, and they were really butting heads. I mean, the whole time, at least until they died, obviously. So he originally hypothesized like this annual enthronement of Yahweh, in which many of the psalms were written, but that's forcing a lot onto the text, and like you're just shoving them in like a box to see if you can just like fit another one in there. So there are lots of arguments between these cultic interpretations and form critical ones, but then you also have like more modern ones that kind of take all this into account. So Prinzlo, for example, he calls this the text immanent approach, where you actually consider content, function, poetic strategy, meaning, all that stuff. So it's just a much more inclusive one. But we're going to be using all these methods in this, but I think that should be the major stuff. And for the most part, I think we can zoom through a lot of this because a lot of it is very repetitive. But I think that there are certainly a lot of very important things that we'll be covering. A lot of very important motifs that are recurring that we should talk about, because they not only are important to understanding Psalms, but they're important to understanding the rest of the Bible too, especially other wisdom literature. Like once we get to Proverbs, especially, you're going to see a lot of connections. And once we get to the New Testament, oh boy, did they scavenge these? They were like vultures with the Psalms. So I'm sure we're going to be covering a lot.
Okay, so the way I suggest, I'll read 1, Lawrence, you got 2, Lilith 3, Tomer 4, Isaac 5.
I mean, sure.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, before we do that, we've already got a comment here. This is Shut Up Matt, who says, panel, is this where we hear of David's secret chord? Something, something pleased the Lord. Hallelujah.
No, Leonard Cohen was a more talented musician and songwriter than David. Not that David can be blamed for all of this sucking God's dick in various keys, but I mean, as we've mentioned before, there was a tradition in wisdom literature, obviously, to attribute any wise sayings to a wise person, which is why everything is attributed to Solomon. And I think, at least with worship songs, there was a similar etiquette. The Psalms of David, they were of David. They weren't actually written by David. He might have written a couple. I don't know if he. It's very mythical, like
Yeah.
edge mythical, but mythical, pseudo mythical. There was somebody, but yeah, you know.
Yeah, some of this stuff, like once we get to I think Psalm 104,
Mhm.
I think Psalm 104 is the one that has a parallel in Egyptian literature, the great
Right.
hymn to the Aten. So that one's going to be a lot of fun to get to. And then
Yeah.
there's for example, there's Psalm 29 as well, and that one was probably from like a Canaanite context that was revamped for they modernized it essentially. Um, but it's really really fun stuff. So a lot of these have like origins in something that's even older, but the more modern form is what people try to date. So yeah, this is gonna be. I think it's gonna be a good time. Psalms is boring as shit to read through, but I think that a lot of the stuff we learned from it is actually pretty fascinating. So
Okay. I'm going to jump in, do mine. Lawrence, you follow. And then when we do the first 5, then we'll decide whether we need to do commentary, right?
no, I think what terrible. We're definitely gonna read one at a time and then do whatever commentary we have.
Okay. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the way of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of the water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but they are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish.
I'd just like to say, as someone who sat in both, the mockers and scorners are way the fuck more fun. The godly suck.
Yeah, it's interesting that yours says the ungodly. So the way this is usually translated, and I just think it has more oomph to it, is so the word there is reshaim, and it's the wicked. So it's the usual word for the overarching opponents of the Psalms. And I'll talk about this a lot more once we get to Psalm 14. That's the one that says, I'm sure you've
I
all
would have had more fun reading Wicked.
I'm sure you've all had Psalm 14 quoted at you, right? The fool says in his heart there is no God. Yeah, so we're gonna
Which
I'm gonna
version
get
should I
into that a
read
lot
then?
more.
I thought I
But
was reading the bestest version.
Uh,
but the wicked they're essentially the people who act like they believe, but it's really only for show. So like they go to temple, but don't really care about the poor, like stuff like that. Their practices or lack thereof lead people astray and cause them to neglect God. So the
so
the
Republicans?
almost, yeah. So they are essentially people who only do it to keep face. But they're or to save face, but like they're just like assholes in their day-to-day life. And they can there's going to be multiple references to the stuff that they do to like people to the people who are writing the psalms, and the psalmists will tell you that like, oh, they lie to your face, with what do they say, like flattering lips or something like that is the phrase that's used. So they so we need to keep that in mind. But I'm going to get back to the Reshaim in other psalms as well. That's going to be a recurring theme. Something I actually liked about this psalm was the parallelism of verses 3 and 4. So like the trees are sturdy and are made more fruitful by the water, and the shaft, the inedible parts of grain, is just scattered and fades from view. So I do like the parallelism there. Uh, and one of the things I want to point out, that there's a similar metaphor actually in the New Testament, about this house being built and the winds hitting up against it. Uh, but I just took I do have a bunch of notes here actually. So we know that it's supposed to be the same wicked as in the rest of the Psalms, uh, because it says here in verse 5, uh, yeah, as in the rest of the Psalms, as they will not stand in the congregation of the righteous, and that's a recurring theme that we'll see when it comes to criticizing the wicked.
Okay.
Well, I like the clarification because it does mean that the wicked are apparently not who we thought. So I guess we don't qualify as wicked because we don't pretend to be believers. I do think we count as mockers and scorners, though. And I'm sticking with that one. It's great.
Sure, yeah, we are certainly scoffers. I always remember that clip of Kent Hovind, uh, quoting. He's quoting the New Testament, which is again quoting Psalms, but he says, there will be scoffers in the end times, and that's like his big argument is like, oh, look at all the people who think I'm wrong. It's like, you're Kent Hovind, you're just wrong, okay? Like, calm down, buddy.
I mean, every pseudo apologist who has been dumber than a bag of rocks in history. And let's face it, there have been some intelligent believers who have tried to actually have, within the context of the current world, understanding intelligent conversation. Kent Hovind is not among them. But every whiny little idiot who, demands that the world recognize that they're white, they have all said, "Well, they said there would be mockers and scorners, and that only proves that you're just ungodly and I will be vindicated at the end." I mean, honestly, you just read a smattering of church writings from any time. You get some pretentious asshole pulling this shit. Also, I've heard the argument that, it's going to be the end of the world because mockers and scorners. I'm like, if God didn't end the world for Voltaire, he's not going to end it for me. I don't think I'm quite that impactful.
That's a good point. Yeah, Voltaire definitely had some unkind words.
Yeah, Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine. That would have been mockers and scorners worth getting God's little panties in a twist. Apparently, no, it's us. So, hurrah. Look at how amazing we are. Aaron, you're
I do.
muted.
Oh,
Oh,
I
sorry.
was
We
gonna
have
say
a
there's an
comment from Lyra the
introduction.
Cree, who says, "Is it reasonable to say that the Psalms preserve older regional religious traditions that help us understand the cultural roots behind biblical beliefs?"
Yes, absolutely. I referenced the two of them, Psalm 29 and Psalm 104, but there's also Psalm 82, for example, which has multiple gods. So yes, I think the Psalms carry a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even verse 2, even chapter 2 or Psalm 2,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
bit of pluralism.
yeah. I think
Yeah, so
uh,
I just wanted to bring up this is the first part of the Book of Psalms, and Rashi always has to have a great introduction where he gives us this traditional understanding that is like very interesting. In this case, it's not crazy. It's just like the who are the people who wrote these books, and more or less
Okay.
it's like, oh, we go through the Book of Psalms and we see there's different words that they use, like conducting, with a melody, with musical accompaniment, with song, with praise, with prayer. Like a lot of psalms start off with a, um, this is a song for David or something, but they a lot of them have different introductions, and he counts 10 different introductions, and then he says these are the 10 people that wrote the psalms: Adam, uh, Melchizedek, Abraham,
I'm sorry. Did
Moses.
you say Adam?
Yes,
So Rashi thought that Adam wrote at least some of the Psalms.
yes.
Okay. You can go ahead and like just delete that web page. That's fine.
Uh,
I mean,
the one about
I
the
would add.
nations conspiring is written by the first human before there were nations. Sure, why not? Fuck it.
I,
Fuck
I
it.
will add. I will add, however, that Rashi is based on like midrashic sources. In this
Yeah,
instance,
yeah.
I think it
It's
is
not like he didn't make it up.
midrash.
Right,
It,
yeah.
it I think here it's midrash Tehillim, 1:6
Yeah,
according
but
to
it's the
Mikvot
go-to place to
Rosh.
get like that traditional like
Okay.
midrashic Talmudic
You know what? Throwing out the
background.
midrash wouldn't be that bad.
Okay, it's fun to know though. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
obviously mythological. I hope even Rashi knew it was mythological, but at least it's fun, like the Egypt and the straw with water and blood.
I mean, he's gonna say, these correspond to the 10 men who composed them. Maybe he didn't mean that the people who composed them actually composed them. They're just the people who inspired them. But so he's got like Adam, Melchizedek, Abraham, Moses, David, Solomon, Asaph, and then 8 through 10 are the three sons of Korach. And Yeduth, there's another name that's mentioned with Yeduthun. In English, I guess. I don't know how you say that. Jeduthun. And
Jeduthun,
Yeah.
like,
Jeduthun.
yeah, Jeduthun, yeah. He's like, we're not sure if that's actually somebody's name or just it's just like apparently it's a reference to like the law or something like that. Um, yeah. So it's like, oh, I want it to be 10. So I'm going to say there's 10 people, and then this extra name isn't important. But yeah.
I think it's important to point out this is clearly a liturgical breakdown. And liturgy is not concerned with what actually happened. I mean, we celebrate Jesus' birth in the middle of the winter. If he was born anything like any of the nativity scenes, it's not when it happened. But his death, we can confidently align with Passover. So when you're writing a liturgical year, getting the rhythms of life, obviously you counterpoint life and death and have his ministry, growth of the church, promise of the salvation, birth. It's a rhythm of life, rotational thing. So liturgies will draw parallelisms like that and connections, not because it's what anyone thinks literally happened, except people who are as dumb as Kent Hovind, because nothing can cure that. But it's about building a structure for the rhythm of religion and life and intertwining them and keeping people, I guess, Yeah, in a rhythm, in a cycle, which can actually be healthy to rhythm your life and structure your life like that. But not if you take this shit literally and get all weird about it.
I mean, you could, yeah. So Rashi has some weird takes, but here's a good source if you want to study Old French, because he wrote down a lot of words that maybe you didn't understand them. He translated them into the common tongue of where he lived, which was in Provence, and two very different places. And so he would write, and he was writing Hebrew, so he would write Old French translations in Hebrew letters. So you would be able to get like um, translations and pronunciations of words from Old French. So it's actually quite a good source for that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's like from the 800s or something like that.
Okay, so for my end, I didn't really know what I'm going to do in Psalms. Um, so
Told you a million times. Sing them.
no.
I don't think Psalm 1 is.
So the main
Good as a
thing
rap.
the main thing I'm going to do, I guess, is basically for all the non-important psalms or the ones that are not the most essential. I'm going to do like a overview of the form or the date or whatever, and if there are like interesting words that are put in the psalms like Selah or Sheminit or etc., I'm going to mention them. But I'm not going to only for the more important psalms. I'll probably write the more extensive commentaries. So for my bibliography, oh, I forgot to send Aaron my bibliography. I'm sorry, but I'll send you today. For my bibliography, I have the traditionals, which are Rashi, Ibn Ezra, David Kimchi, Isaiah Ditrani, and Menachem Hameiri. I don't think we've had Hameiri before, but now we have. For the general commentaries, we have so there is the word biblical commentary, but it is composed by the first part is Psalms 1 through 50 by Craigie, and is it also the second part is also by Craigie, or is it? No, it's actually the second part is 51 through 11. Sorry, 51 through 100 by Tate, and 101 through 150 by Allen. We also have Gerstenberger's commentary from the forms of the Old Testament. We have Hermenia, though it is only through Psalms 51 through 150 by Hosfeld and Zenger. We also have Terrian's commentary. And Adele Berlin has a commentary from the JBS Bible commentary.
Abdel Halim?
Adele Berlin.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Is Tyrion's commentary on verse 1 happy as the man who dies with it? Okay, whatever.
That is a very similar sounding name. It just shocked me for a moment because when I went to the UAE, a friend of mine there gave me a copy of the Quran translated by Abdel Halim.
No, she's Berlin is a prominent scholar. She has the commentaries on Esther, and I think also in Song of Songs there is a recent one from Hermenia. I think she also wrote on Lamentations. I'm not certain though.
So she's a woman talking to us about theology and scripture.
Yeah,
Plenty of women scholars.
yes,
Darn.
yes.
I know, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Women
how
have
do you
been trying to-
interpret that part?
I think it's just women trying to clean up men's messes for a few centuries there.
There's been in the past couple decades, there's been a lot of like feminist commentaries released too.
Yeah,
I realize that, of course.
Yeah.
I'm just we're talking about the Old Testament.
I still really like it. Is the Old Testament though? I mean,
Yeah, I think Aaron just wanted to be sexist. But while you're actually mentioning that, before you get into the commentary, since you mentioned some of your sources, so I was also using the one by Craigie. I'm also using, it is an older one, but I'm also using Dahoud's, and I have a few other things on me. Oh shit! Almost dropped that enormous fucking book. So I have Erdman's commentary, which is
Oh.
like multiple thousands of pages long. Um, I have, as much as I don't fucking like this guy, Nahum Sarna's book on Psalms, and then Ben Witherington III's Psalms Old and New. Those are the main things I'm using right now, at least. Those are the ones I've used so far, I should say.
Okay.
Okay, so on this psalm, so Gerstenberger argued that the language, themes, and theological interests of Psalms 1 are markedly late in terms of the Old Testament history. He writes, quote, "There are strong indications of a beginning separation of Orthodox from non-Orthodox Jewish groups. The psalm betrays synagogal customs." Oh, sorry. Uh, The psalm betrays synagogal costumes and values such as concentration on the Torah, meditation on scripture, disassociation from the godless, and emphasis on private effort to keep within the community. Compare Joshua 1:8, Nehemiah 8:1 through 12, and Daniel 1:17. Presumably, then, Psalms 1 was read in communal services of Torah abiding groups, possibly as an introduction to scripture reading or as an opening of the service. Arens, citing Midrash Psalms, stresses the close correspondence of Psalm 1 to Genesis 1 and 2. He postulates a joint synagogal lection of the two texts within the 3-year cycle of Torah reading. End quote. Likewise, Krauss dates the psalm to the post-exilic times. He notes that H.W. Wolff considered references to conditions in the kingdom of the Ptolemies in the 3rd century BC, and Gunkel understood the first verse as referring to the repudiation of the Samaritans and the dissolution of mixed marriages. Dom dates the psalm in the last century BC and leaves room for the possibility that the preamble of the Psalter could have been taken from an older Torah scroll. Terian, however, argues that in its oral form, the poem may go back to early Yahwistic wisdom, or the courts of Solomon and Hezekiah. Craigie notes that the analysis of meter in this psalm is notoriously difficult. Quote, "The interpretation of most scholars has proceeded on the basis of a provisional metrical analysis, but it has been claimed by Bolo that the psalm is not metrical at all, but is plain rhythmic prose, quote unquote. Bolo is probably correct in his view that the psalm is not metrical in the normal sense. The only approximate indicator of balance is the division of lines, which are very uneven in length. But although there is not a normal metrical structure to Psalms 1, it is still dearly and distinctively poetry. The psalm as a whole is a finely crafted piece of poetic literature, as various recent studies have shown. Merendino has shown that the psalm is a work of art, and Remy Lac's structural analysis has shown the closely knit structure of the whole. The text is a, quote, tissue of interdependencies, end quote. That's it.
All right. I mean, it's interesting to look at the poetic forms, but yeah.
Yeah, like I said, we're gonna be doing all sorts of criticism here.
Yeah.
So who is next? Is it me, Aaron?
Well, hold on. We've got a couple of comments I got to read.
Oh,
So
Yes.
Trevor in 369 says, I have, no, it says, have you noticed the tendency for Christians to say they are better than other people simply for being white Christians? What you've read in Psalms 1, they seem unrighteous to me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff you can take to kind of throw back in their face. I always point to Paul, where he talks about how shitty hypocrites are.
Yeah.
Because because the thing is, I have a lot of criticisms of Paul, right? He was a fucking douche, but he was very obviously against hypocrisy. And then you take that verse, I forget what verse it is, but you take the one where he says like money is the root of all evil, and then you have like these money-minded Christians, and that is very unchristian, because Paul. So I always point that I got into, this is a weird fucking moment for me because I was weirdly in a way defending biblical values, because there was this Christian that I was talking to that was like, oh, you know what I want? I want like a whole bunch of servants. Like, I want basically slaves. I want to have a mansion. Like, that's how money-minded this guy was. And there was this other Christian guy, a friend of mine. I've talked about him before, Penn guy, Eric, who I've been trying to get on the show for a while. And Eric was arguing with him about, like, dude, you can't just like concentrate on money all the fucking time. Like, that's a terrible thing to do. And I went up to this guy because I mostly did it because out of my hatred for capitalism, but I was able to use his book against him and say, look, Paul is very obviously against this. Like, this is biblically not what you should be concentrating on, but money. So like, it was very weird. It was a very weird moment for me. I was mostly fighting against capitalism, but I was using the Bible to do it because I was talking to a Christian.
I put up a Bible. I put up a video early this morning, like 3 a.m. And it's not going to be public until tomorrow. It's a patron preview right now, but I'm talking there about how Christianity, how Christian nationalism is anti-Christian according to Christ. Because he was a renunciate, he was a pacifist. He wanted to stay out of politics, right? The Christians were going to be out of the political scheme. They're giving charity to the poor and the foreigner and all of that. Whereas Christian nationalism is just completely opposite in every respect. They're militant and prosperity gospel and white supremacist and does all that shit. So that Jesus would be in trouble if he lived in this country.
Oh, they
yeah.
would absolutely. He would have been picked up by your icy Gestapo and on his way to a death camp in El Salvador last year. Like, it's not even the minute he stepped foot, his ass would be toast. They would.
Okay, Beardy McSandals, let's go.
Pretty much, right? And he's brown, and we all know that if there's anything that white supremacist Christians fear, it's brown people. Because I don't know why, because maybe it's because they hate spice and they like all their food to be like gray and gross.
I don't know. If I would have thought that if you really thought that white was the absolute supreme and you want to be proud of of being white and all of that, why would you be threatened by anybody else around you?
Because they know they're weak and pitiful and stupid and vulgar and every undesirable look. No one who says I'm as good as you believes it. The Saint Bernard does not say it to the toy poodle. The pretty woman doesn't go to the plain ugly one and go, I'm as good as you. The smart person never says it to the stupid person. It's not a thing. People who have to be like, I'm just as good as you are not. On their own metric, they're not.
And we got another comment from Alira the Free, who says, what would the justification for such a belief thought? Is that right? That Adam gained godly omniscience. What?
What would be the justification for such a belief, though?
Oh, belief, though. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I completely misread that. That Adam gained godly omniscience when he ate his apple, and so he knew about all the nations.
I believe that may have been in reference to my comment about how ridiculous it was to think that Adam wrote the first section of Psalms when the second one talks about all the nations. Admittedly,
well, there was a long time between the first one.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly which Psalms are attributed traditionally to Adam specifically.
Yeah,
probably wouldn't be Psalm 2. Yeah, or
I would hope not.
Okay. So are we moving to the next one?
Yeah.
Aaron, if I can interrupt quickly. So my tool for putting up the comments is down. It's probably because either the server crashed or there's a power outage. We're trying to work on
Viagra?
No.
Okay.
we might do that, but then we'll have to order it, and then we don't get it done during the show.
Never
But we're
mind.
trying to. Also, Aaron, you mentioned white people think they're supreme. If white is being better, then why are there tanning studios? Always wondered.
Because whiteness is gross. And even people who like being identified as white know it deep in their souls.
Want to be
Whiteness
brown.
is ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I should also note that, I mean, the ancient Christians love Psalms, and some of the overviews are really, really long. So I don't really want to get into it, honestly.
Because
really
No.
For time's sake. I
yeah,
really don't.
the Christians they use these as proof texts a lot of the time, so they're referenced everywhere.
Well, we know that what they're all going to say, right? Well, this portends Jesus.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, it somewhat makes me tempted to grab a random hymnal, search through it for phrases that sound like they're talking about me, and explain how all Christian songwriters have been foretelling in portents the arrival of me. It's going to be the same logic. So just sounds like a squirrel, but I think the answer is Jesus ad infinitum.
Let's continue.
All right, I'll do Psalm 2 then. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord has them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces with like a potter's vessel. Now, therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, with trembling. Kiss his feet, or he will be angry, and you will perish in the way. For his wrath is quickly kindled. Happy are all who take refuge in him. So this is obviously a psalm about kingship, and specifically the Judean king's relationship to his God. And this is one of the ones that I was mentioning that like a lot of that some people like dated to the Solomonic era. But some people also placed it in like Hezekiah's reign in the 8th century, or even like exilic or post-exilic. So it's been all over the place. So yeah, here's some of the things that I found kind of interesting about this. So yeah, against the Lord and his anointed, in verse 2. So it clearly shows a royal context. The king has the power of God behind him, but the enemies are sure to fall. And in verse 3, since the opponents say, let us burst their bonds apart and cast their cords from us, it seems like these kings and rulers are thought to be under the control of the Judean king. So we talked about this in the king's narratives, how there are multiple kings who used slave labor from those that they captured. And while many of them are like in the mythic past, it could be a clue to the historical context at least. So verse 6, this one is actually pretty kind of different in the Septuagint version. So we already know that the king has been anointed at this point. And it definitely is probably the largest difference between the Masoretic text and the Septuagint. The Greek text has the king saying that God has set him on the holy hill, where this one it's a quote of what God is saying. So in verse 7, yeah, this is probably the most important one from this psalm, at least. You are my son, today I have begotten you. So it's thought to be from the anointed king in the psalm, and the Lord has adopted him. So, and the verse is used multiple times in the New Testament, and it was the kingship theology of ancient Israel was unique in this way, where the king was adopted by God, essentially. It's like on the day that the king becomes a king, on the day of his coronation, that's when he becomes God's son. He at least has some aspect of divinity potentially, or I should say, he has the divine behind him, on his side, but not necessarily divine. While like in other places, the kings were seen as divine, or they were divine emanations, or something like that. Uh, so to me, this one is very interesting, and like I said, it's used in the New Testament.
We can all see where the Christians would see
Right.
that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out where you said kiss his feet lest he be angry, because I was actually reading again Francesca Stavropolo, God and Anatomy, and she talks about feet a lot and how this was a very hierarchical power symbol. And this is literally in this sense, you can see it telling the king to kiss God's feet, which is a very humble thing. You don't kings don't do that.
Well,
But
it's telling the other rulers, the
yeah,
kings and the rulers of the earth.
kiss, but the NIV translation changes it to kiss the son, SON,
Yes.
Yeah,
because they want to
thing
make it Jesus.
the
As
thing
opposed
is
to
the thing is the
visuals of
Hebrew.
kissing God's feet.
I mean, I don't really see how leg can be read here. The Hebrew here is nashku bar, and nashku means to kiss, but bar, if I from what I've read, bar in Aramaic means son, and so there are some people who take bar here to be an Aramaism of son. But the interpretation here doesn't necessarily have to be like Jesus. The son can also be the king. So
Yeah.
Who is the adopted son of God, as it said 3 verses ago, divine right of kings, but with familial authority, but it's adopted. Yeah, it's a thing.
yeah.
And then I also wanted to point out there in verse 8, the ends of the earth, your possession, where, if you ask, like, he'll make the ends of the earth your possession. So yeah, God obviously grants the king power to overtake the enemy nations, but and I talked about this before, they literally did believe that the earth had ends. And this was the phrase that's used in the Sargon geography, for example, when describing the amount of land that had been taken over. So it's not like the whole earth. That would have been like the phrase the four corners, or like the four quadrants, or something like that. So if we compare it to ancient Near Eastern texts, we see that the phrase like the four corners, four quadrants, however it pops up, that one always refers to the whole earth, while the ends of the earth carried a literal connotation.
They were
I would say that
flirts.
about
Mm-hmm.
verse 12, where you were talking about like kiss the son. That is one translation. There are other versions that are, I mean, more Hebraic, more based on like it being Hebrew rather than some Aramaic word in the middle. JPS, for example, has pay homage in good faith, but they do note that the meaning is uncertain. I'm not sure exactly. There's also like Rashi kind of sees it as something to do with arming yourself with purity, or equipping, but it could also have something to do with like the more not kissing, but like longing, affection, sort of thing. So
It's in
there's
the
multiple
Greek
ways
word
of looking
for worship.
at. Yeah. And actually, the Talmud does talk about this psalm, and some of the sages seem to see this psalm as possibly being prophetic for the Messiah. Which, by the way, the anointed one, my anointed one, is in
Mashiach.
Hebrew is Mashiach, his anointed one, I should say, is Mashiach, Messiah, which is his Messiah. But they also argue that the actual context of the chapter seems to imply David and the Philistines or something like that.
Well, and the term Mishah has obviously been applied to several different people. It's not a single. I mean, yes, there's someday the great Messiah will come, but it's also there have
Yeah.
been messiahs at various points. Usually, whoever took a sword and stabbed the people who were oppressing them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mashiach is just like anointing with oil, because that was part of their ritual of making somebody king, was to anoint them. But it was also used in, I think the Bible uses it for like part of the Kohen, the priestly
Mm.
inauguration. I think they also do some sort of anointing, maybe just the head
Yeah,
priest.
they do. They do. It's I mean it's the anointing is supposed to, imbue you with the hell, they did that with King Charles. They took the
Yes, yeah,
giant
they
weird
did.
ass spoon and poured oil on him, and then he was magic.
Yeah, people have kept the tradition.
Yeah, the Brits need their tradition. Otherwise, you get Oliver Cromwell. Please keep traditions. We don't need more Puritans.
Are we moving
Don't
on?
worry about this.
No.
Omar probably has something.
This is a more extensive commentary. So an overview. Gerstenberger writes that Psalms 2 was composed sometimes between the 6th and 3rd century BCE to serve as a cult song in early Jewish community services. Terrian, however, argues that the poet of Psalms 2 lived in the time of the monarchy and knew the liturgy of royal coronation. Krauss writes that it is possible that the psalm dates to the era of the Jerusalem monarchy in Judah, but writes that in the course of the history of tradition, there were intrusions into the statements, and the exact determination of the age of the psalm is made difficult by the use of conventionalized language. He writes, however, that the Aramaisms, Regesh and Ra'ah in verse 9, seem to point to the later intrusions alluded to. He also notes M. Trevor's theory that Psalms 2 is to be thought of and interpreted as originating in the year 103 BCE, that the psalm contains an acrostic allusion to Alexander Jannaeus. This, however, is rejected by most scholars.
Yeah, I was like, that's really fucking late, and it's like Alexander
Yes.
Jannaeus, really? Like that's way too late. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds a bit Bible codey. Like I feel like they're stretching. They're stretching.
They should be
Yeah.
a contortionist.
Okay.
Okay, on verse 2, against the Lord and against his anointed. He before anointed is Mashiach. Some traditionals, like Kimchen Hameiri, understood the anointed to be David, who was anointed by Samuel as king. Ibn Ezra wrote that the people should not deny Yahweh, but rather submit Yasuruel to his authority, Mishma'ato, to pay him tribute, Mas. Craigie writes that the presence of Mashiach in 2:2 does not necessarily mean that the psalm was initially messianic. He writes that the reference of the term in the context of the psalm's initial use is simply to the human king, for whom the coronation was conducted. Only later in history did the messianic implications of the psalm were suggested. Krauss writes that even if the phrase is an explanatory addition, this complete complement matches the sense of the whole psalm. Mashiach is the king of God who has been earmarked by anointing and who is untouchable, as we see in 1 Samuel 2:10 and 35, 12, 3 and 5, etc. On verse 6, Krauss comments, quote, the speech with which Yahweh will in good time frighten and angrily turn back the rebels is now reported literally in verse 6. It contains the statement that Yahweh himself has established the king enthroned on Zion. Nesech means pour out a libation or dedicate. What is in the offering is the revelation of a fact that is still hidden from the foreign powers, or in any case, not known to them in all of its consequences. God professes his loyalty to his chosen king before all the nations. That is, that this revelation takes place in anger and wrath in verse 5 is noted by a number of exegetes with embarrassment. But we will have to ask whether this fact does not correspond to the prophetic message that sees the coming of the Messiah as a judgment over contemporary political principles, as we see in Isaiah 7. The revelatory speech of God is a radical, clarifying end event that, of course, should not be understood in terms of a fixed eschatology, remote in time, for God's angry eruption is very near, in verse 12. It is imminent. Worth noting, incidentally, is the reference to the fact that God's king is established on God's hill. Both suffixes of the first person singular refer to the double theme of the election of the dynasty of David and the election of Jerusalem.
I got a comment from Elira the Free. Says, so reading Psalm 1 and 2 together, interesting intro. Does this pairing suggest that personal righteousness and divine kinship together form the foundation of the entire book?
Maybe the
Uh,
first book of Psalms, but not the whole book of Psalms.
Yeah, I
'Cause
wouldn't
it's,
say so. I'd say that there are plenty of there are plenty of psalms that don't, I wouldn't say, fall into those categories.
I think it is a valuable pairing to note, though, because the purpose of a lot of liturgy, as I said, is to maintain the structure of religion integrated into life, and there's a lot of, no doubt, liturgical stuff in here. But the two powers of the crown and the gods, that balance of power has always been a thing in this era. I mean, hell, it was a thing long into the Holy Roman Empire, where it was, the emperor and the pope, and they were duking it out for. And I suppose having a balance between two powers is better than just one tyrannical lunatic running amok. But yeah, yeah, it's definitely a theme that we focused on frequently in certain areas of the Pentateuch. So it's a thing.
Okay, on verse 7, you are my son, today I have become your father. This passage is quoted in Acts 13:33, with Paul relating the resurrection of Christ to divine sonship. Some early Christians believe that the Father's address to the Son indicates incarnation, according to Cyril of Alexandria and Theodoret, while others believe that it signifies eternal generation, according to Origen, Augustine, and Cassiodorus, or it refers to those who come to know God, according to Methodius. Most traditionals reject the plain meaning of son here. Rashi writes that David was told that he'll be the head of the Israelites, and for them, David was considered Yahweh's son because they were dependent on him. He also notes that the most favored kings of Yahweh are also termed his son, as is the case for Solomon in 1 Chronicles 22:10. Ibn Ezra wrote that Yahweh told David that he should serve Yahweh, just as a son honors a father. Kimchi took son to refer to a respectable person. Targum reads, you are as dear to me as a son to a father, pure as though I had created you this day. Terrien writes that the proclamation may have been another borrowing from the coronation liturgies of the ancient Near East. For example, the Egyptian god Amun-Re said to Queen Hatshepsut, quote, my darling daughter, I am thy dear father. I confirm thy position as ruler of the two kingdoms, end quote. Likewise, the decree may have designated the document that verifies officially the legitimacy of a new sovereign, possibly the royal charter, that even in Israel and Judah was presented to him, as we see in 2 Kings 11:12. He further writes, quote, belief in the divine sonship of kings and queens from the copulation of gods was quite common in the ancient Near Eastern mythology, although differences existed from country to country. In Egypt, the pharaoh was considered to have been sexually procreated by the god and the queen mother. A decree confirmed the double nature of the new sovereign. In Mesopotamia, a new emperor was proclaimed on the day of his coronation, servant and friend of the gods. Psalms 2 adopts the terminology of divine sonship, but transforms it into a metaphor of adoption. Compare Genesis 33 and 50:23. On the very day of the coronation ceremony, Yahweh declares having begotten his anointed. Thus, the Hebrew concept of divine paternity is not to be confused with the myths of copulation between gods and mortals. Likewise, Israel was deemed to be figuratively the firstborn son of Yahweh, as we see in Exodus 4:22. The proclamation of divine filiality receives an eschatological significance, for it is confirmed by the promise of a worldwide inheritance. A conquest of all the extremities of the earth, in verse 8, does not apply even to the most audacious ambitions of David or his successors. Is it that the psalmist continues the parody of the coronation ceremony in projecting it in universal terms towards the reign of the Messiah to come?
One thing I did want to note on what you said, when it comes to the Egyptian pharaohs being, sons or daughters of a deity, they were very often said to be sons or daughters of multiple deities, as in, like, you could be one pharaoh, but say, like, oh, I'm the son of Amun, I'm the son of Thoth, I'm the son of, like, all these other Egyptian deities. So it's not like that one's a little bit different because it's not like one to one. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, at least we know where they got the idea that Jesus could be 100% man and 100% God and 100% both and 100%
Oh,
not.
that's definitely not where they got it from.
No, I'm aware. I'm just saying the irrationality of this kind of
Yeah,
dramatic divine duality is clearly not new.
yeah. To understand religion like this, you do have to, like, you have to basically force yourself to think differently. You have to, like, take yourself out of logic and reason and be more of, like, vibes based religion. And then you might, it's like doing vibes based politics. Like, it's not, you're not actually, like, saying anything like rational. You're just, like, appealing to, like, intuition and people's feelings and stuff.
It's vibes.
Yeah. So you do have to put yourself in a different mindset to understand some of this stuff, but once you do, it makes sense.
You just
Internally,
gotta flow with
I
it,
should say that
man.
internally.
Sense.
Okay, on 8 and 9, Craigie comments, quote, the king's sonship carried privileges, but the privileges were to be asked of God, who would then willingly grant them. The privileges are expressed in ideal terms as the control of all nations to the ends of the earth in verse 8, and power to break them and pulverize them in verse 9, words which refer back to the rebellious nature of the earthly nations in verses 1 and through 3. The poetry in verse 9 presents this regal authority in a dramatic manner. An iron rod is sometimes intrinsically strong, just as a potter's vessel is constitutionally fragile. This stark contrast between the power of the Davidic king and the fragility of earthly monarchs rested not in the human strength of the Hebrew king, but in the strength of God, the speaker of these words. And finally, 12, kiss his son or he will be angry. The Masoretic text reads, Nashku bar pen ya'anaf. Yeah. The word bar in Aramaic means son, a meaning favored by Peshitta and several traditionals, who take son to refer to the king, according to Ibn Ezra and Kimchi. However, early translations and other traditionals render bar as instruction or discipline, reading bar in the sense of purity. Compare Rashi, who reads, arm yourselves with purity of the heart. Krauss argues that the text is corrupt and notes that A. Berthollet suggested that the two last words of verse 11, Gilu bara'ada, and the first two words of verse 12, Nashku bar, are to be exchanged. In this way, the text reads, kiss his feet with trembling, bera'ada nashku beraglav. He writes that this conjecture also shows consideration for the parallelism of members. Likewise, Gerstenberger notes that this correction has been widely accepted, and it gives a much clearer idea of the submission requested of the nations. Terrian, however, writes that this hypothesis is superfluous, noting that Aramaic had become the lingua franca of the ancient Near East long before Persian times. He writes that the rhythm of verses 11b and 12a would be compromised by the corrections, and the kiss has to be addressed not to God, but to his representative on earth. Likewise, Kreger supports the Masoretic text and writes that the reference is to an act of homage which earthly rulers would pay to the son, i.e., to the king. Thus, verses 10 through 12 comprise a passage in which the earthly rulers are required to serve God and to acknowledge his king. That's it.
All right. Who's next? Is it Lilith or Isaac? Perhaps Peter?
No, I'm up next. I am 3. Oh, good. Oh, okay. See, this is funny because I have the we'll call it the Christian traditional note here that says, a psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I noted this earlier. So a lot of these are gonna have titles,
Yes.
and these titles come from later periods.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
It's,
Yeah.
But
oh,
that is the
and
first verse, right?
no, it's the
No.
title. That's the thing. In the Old Testament, in the Masoretic text, the first verse is the first verse, but in the Old Testament, it's the title, so it doesn't have a numbering. So verse 2 in the
So
Masoretic text is verse 1 in the Old Testament.
For those of you who were not
yeah.
with us for this little bit of pseudo history, Absalom was a son of the king who rebelled against his father because when one of his brothers or half brothers raped his sister, his dad didn't do shit about it. And so when he killed the man who raped his sister, this was bad, apparently. Well, I don't know. There were feelings and drama. And he was kind of done with his dad being such a piece of shit. So he staged a rebellion. And then Joab killed him against the king's orders, and it was all very dramatic. Also, he slept with some of his dad's wives, which is creepy. On top of the roof of the palace for some reason, because exhibitionism for the power play. Big fuck small, I guess. Anyway.
And then he got caught in a tree.
Yeah, he did. Apparently, he had beautiful, long, luscious, flowing locks. Aaron, you should approve of that. And they were his ultimate undoing because he was a beautiful man with a sense of justice who stood up for his family. So obviously, he was the bad guy. Anyway, I believe at this point David is fleeing the city, and dramatic, and many of his friends have deserted him, and he's heartbroken. Oh Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you are a shield around me, O Lord. You bestow glory on me and lift up my head. To the Lord I cry aloud, and he answers me from his holy hill. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear. The tens of thousands drawn up against me on every side arise. O Lord, deliver me, O my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people.
You might want to
Selah.
say, yeah, there you go. I was like, you might want to say the same.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say,
Yeah, there
your
is.
translation seems to omit it. Yeah.
No.
Oh, I did not include that. Okay, as God will not deliver him. Selah.
Yeah.
The Lord will cry loud, the
And
answer me
also
from his
verse
holy
5.
hill.
Yeah.
Selah.
Yeah, verse
And
5
then
too. Yeah,
Selah
they
at the
each have-
end.
Yeah.
I'm not actually, I've always wondered, I have heard so many disparate things about what Selah means. If it's like a musical term, if it's a, rejoice or
Yeah,
huzzah
It's
or
unclear.
whatever.
there are a
It's
lot of
unclear.
hypotheses. I've also heard that oh, it's just something that's added for poetic meter. So when it's like in songs today where they say yeah at some point, just to fill in a spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it
At
just
the end of a line.
means rock, right?
I mean the
Or
Hebrew is Samech Lamed Hey, not Samech Lamed Aleph. Ein, sorry. Samech Lamed Ein.
right. It's spelled differently how you normally would
Selah.
spell rock, but
Yeah.
It may have been a call and response thing that is
Oh.
genuinely part of liturgy, and times
I
of
mean,
hardship need liturgy too.
I noted in my I have it in my commentary. I'll later or if anybody else has something to say. So
No, I do, yeah. Shockingly, I took notes for this. So, yeah, there's a whole section that we're gonna get to, or that we're getting into now, I should say. So this one and most of the ones following are said to be from David, but yeah, those titles are a later period, and they're all usually labeled under individual laments because it's like one guy lamenting. So yeah, the righteous are thought to be persecuted in some way by the wicked, but God is of course going to keep the psalmist safe. So verse 2 says the enemies say there there is no help for you in God. At least that's the translation that's given in the NRSV UE. So the people saying this are the wicked, and we know that because of verse 7. So it's not like they all of a sudden have a different enemy. So in the beginning, he talks about his foes saying this, and then in verse 7, uh, you have like, yeah, for you strike all my enemies on the cheek, you break the teeth of the wicked. So the wicked are obviously being referred to here. Um, and they clearly believe in God. They just think he's less than useful. Let's put it that way. That he doesn't pay attention to what's going on. Now, one that I found really interesting. So, verse 4 there, I cry aloud to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy hill. Uh, Now, that is important to me for a couple reasons. So, yeah, God is, of course, answering from Zion, and that's the traditional way that Yahweh was viewed. His seat of power was there. So that's why he spoke from there. So like Isaiah 2:3, many people shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. From out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." Which is almost verbatim in Micah 4:2, by the way. They're virtual carbon copies. And Joel 3:16 says, "The Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem." And the same phrasing is found in Amos 1:12. In Amos 1:2 as well. So it's very clear that his dwelling is on Zion, and all instructions come from there. So it's not like he's going someplace and saying these things or doing something. He's doing things from his seat at Zion. And I think that is, to me, that's just a really it's interesting theologically.
It certainly reflects the older, sort of more ancient, how, the gods, at the tops of mountains, there would be high places where the heavens and the earth would connect. And then, of course, you have the theological growth of into, no, this specific hill is special because God chose it, and you build all your mythology around it. And then you put your temple on it, and look, this is the only place where we can talk to the God, because it's, and then he is seen as, ruling from this high place. Well,
Yeah,
it's
there
not
was
high,
always like
but,
this seat of power for
Mhm.
Yahweh. Even in later tradition, we can tell from not God necessarily, but from at least the Shekinah, um,
Hmm.
where it does have like a range. Like the closer you get to it, the more powerful and like illustrious it is. So
The
like,
radar's fading out at the border.
right, yeah, yeah. So there is a range to divine power. It emanates from a certain place.
That is hilarious. I mean, I get it, but it's very, it sounds like superhero logic.
It's kind of like you ever seen the movie Hancock?
Yeah, yeah,
Will
yeah.
Smith? Yeah. So like the further away he is from, I forget her name, but
Her
like
his soulmate, yeah.
yeah, yeah, like the more powerful he is. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start this. So I have an overview, and I have a commentary on Selah. So the psalm is described as a mizmor, song, psalm, or hymn to David, a title widely used in psalms, though this attribution is speculative. The psalm is said to be written when David fled from Absalom, an event described on 2 Samuel 15 through 18. Telian argued that the omission of any reference to death of Absalom does not constitute a serious objection to a 10th century origin. Gelstenberger takes verse 1b to be a scholarly extension alluding to 2 Samuel 15:14. Klaus writes that the application is proved to be erroneous by the psalm itself and does not help to elucidate the text. Citing K.H. Bernhardt, he writes that the explanatory note is a later editorial addition, with the editor not concerned by an exact historical fact, but rather finds a situation taken from the history of his people, from which the psalm may always be understood. Thus, quote, we should think of the psalm titles as evidence of the first exegetical activity, end quote. Craigie writes that while it is impossible to prove that David composed the psalm, the parallels between the psalm and what is described in 2 Samuel 15 through 18 may suggest that the psalm originated in the context of this particular event in the lifetime of David. And on verse 3 about Selah, this word is used 71 times in Psalms, and its exact meaning is unclear. Septuagint reads diapsalma, which is rendered as pause, instrumental interlude, louder, or interlude on strings. Aquila, Vulgate, and Targum read forever, a reading adopted by Rashi and Hameiri. Ibn Ezra wrote that Selah is used as a confirmation, just like it is so or thus it is. Kimchi wrote that Selah is referring to lifting up the musical instrument from the passage, i.e., when the word is mentioned and read, there was a raising of the sound of the music. Craigie notes Mowinkle's opinion that the term refers to points in the use of the song in the context of worship at which the congregation prostrated themselves on the ground in obeisance before God. He writes, however, that the absence of a clear etymology for the term means that the uncertainty as to its meaning cannot be removed. He notes that the most common derivation is from the root salal, to raise or lift up, implying either raising the voice or raising the volume. However, it is possible to suggest alternative derivations, and so a single etymological proposal has yet been received with the common assent of all. Still, it might indicate that many psalms were initially sung with musical accompaniment. That's it.
So you said, yeah, I see the Psalma there.
Yep, Salma.
Yeah, Psalma is alone would just be just the title Psalms. So if we were to parse it, Psalma would be like through the Psalms or because of the Psalms. So yeah, that's really not super strong. I can't really tell much from that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we got Isaac. Is Isaac up next for Psalm 4?
Psalm 4? I thought I was Psalm 5.
Oh,
No,
so maybe-
Tomer is Psalm 4.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
Okay. For the leader with instrumental music, a Psalm of David. Answer me when I call, O God, my vindicator. You freed me from distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. You who side against me, how long will my glory be mocked? Will you love illusions, have recourse to frauds? Selah. Know that God keeps the faithful close. God hears when I call out. So tremble and see no more. Ponder it on your bed and sigh. Selah. Offer sacrifices in righteousness and trust in God. Many say, oh, for good days. Bestow your favor on us, O Eternal One. You put joy into my heart when their grain and wine show increase. Safe and sound I lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Eternal One, keep me secure. O Eternal One, keep me secure.
So, I mean, I did have a couple things though. So it's interesting here that God is supposed to listen to his faithful here. So verse 4, I think that I read that there were some translation issues with this because it's translated in multiple ways. So the NRSV has like when you are disturbed or like when you are angry, do not sin. And I think Tomer, you had a different
So
translation.
tremble and sin no more.
Right, yeah, as like an imperative.
Yeah.
So well, I'm just putting a little pin in that. So verse 5, this one was interesting to me, right? Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. It's interesting to me because there are parts of the Bible which say that God doesn't require sacrifices. That includes one of the later Psalms that we're going to get into, and Hosea 6:6. So this may have been written at a time when the temple was still central to the cult. But all in all, I'd say like to the author, like more can be gained by worship than by material wealth. But yeah, I would definitely like to hear more on the translation stuff for verse 4.
So verse 4, I mean, it's verse 5 in the Masoretic text.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So it's the Hebrew is rigsu ve'al techeta'u, which means rigsu. I think the JPS here renders tremble, but it can also mean to be agitated or shiver or tremble. And techeta'u, I think it's from the root chet, which means not to sin. So
Sure, but is this a so it says like I don't know what the English for this would be. But like in Greek there's like the aorist, which is used for punctiliar action. So like the aorist can often be translated as like when you, like in this case, like when you are disturbed. Like that's punctiliar. It happens at one point in time when. Um uh but your translation went with with an imperative as like a command. So that's mostly what I'm wondering about. Like what what is that
Yeah,
in the Hebrew?
the trembling, like tremble, is imperative,
Okay, it's an
and
imperative. All
the
right.
negation is also, I think, but plural, like and do not
Okay.
sin in the future, or maybe it's not imperative; it's just future tense. And you won't.
Illyra. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
thank you
wow.
Oh
so
yeah,
much.
look at that. 50 gifties from Alira.
Damn, girl.
I'm not entirely sure
yeah,
because if I look
though-
at the top of the chat, it looks like she gave 50 twice. There's two notifications at the top
Okay,
of the
Illyra
chat.
is my new favorite.
Yeah, Illyra, my Illyra inspired a new series that my wife and I are planning. My wife was saying, she was saying, you got 400 new memberships, and trying to figure out the reason why. What is it that we're doing right? And I'm like, well, no, it's not anything you or I did. It was Illyra.
Illyra's awesome.
So you're making like members only, like series or something?
Yes, exactly.
Ooh.
Yes, exactly. Members and patrons.
Of course.
Okay, so this is weird. I mean, Klaus has just think things over in your hearts, but do not miss the mark. And Craigie notes that verse 5 is difficult, both with respect to translation and interpretation. It might be paraphrased as follows: you can tremble with anger and rage, but don't sin by doing anything. You can speak your evil words within your hearts, but don't speak them out loud. Lie still and silent upon your beds, where you can do no harm.
That's an
That would be weird considering the rest of Psalms is all like the issue is that people aren't genuine and don't like believe in their hearts. They only believe out loud. So that would be a weird interpretation and really in conflict with the rest of Psalms, I think.
not to mention I don't know how the answer to being filled with rage is to go lay down and not do anything but tremble. Like I'm not saying it's the worst strategy you could possibly use, but I don't think it's the
Yes.
best.
I mean, it's coming across a bit like, if you have nothing nice to say, then be quiet. It's like,
Classic.
peace.
Okay. So yes. So overview. Traditionally, Psalms 4 is classified as an individual lament or complaint. Gelstenberger explains that invocation, charge of enemies, complaint, and expression of confidence are integrated to function as one petition for Yahweh's help. He writes that the psalm could be labeled as a psalm of contest, but the direct charge to adversaries within a prayer does not necessarily constitute a separate genre or subgenre. Craig classifies it as a psalm of confidence, quote unquote, in which the innocent worshiper rises above the grounds of lamentation with sure trust in God. Terrien writes, quote, the sons of noble men were fascinated by the gods and goddesses of the nations that threatened the divided nation, and especially the surviving kingdom during its agony after the death of Josiah in 609 through 587 BCE. After the exile in Babylon and the restoration in Persian times, the musicians of the Second Temple incorporated this vesperal cantilena, quote unquote, within their collection of Davidic pieces in Psalms 2 through 4. It eventually became a communal chant in the daily liturgy. End quote. Krauss writes that in its textual and metrical form, the psalm presents a number of difficulties. Quote, the transposition in verse 4 is mandatory. Corrections must be undertaken in verses 3, 6, 7, and 8. Accordingly, the following metrical picture results. Verse 1a is an isolated quadruple meter followed by a double triple meter. The 4 plus 4 meter is accordingly presented in verses 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. The corrections on metrical grounds on verses 7 and 8 are insignificant. Verse 5 may be thought of as an isolated quadruple meter.
Okay.
And for the title for the director of music, in Hebrew, lamenatzeach, the word appears 55 times in Psalms, but its meaning is unclear. Septuagint reads, regarding completion, Vulgate unto the end, and Targum for the singer. The word is generally interpreted as for the director of music, as we see by Rashi, Ibn Ezra, and Kimchi, or choir master by modern commentators. Krauss notes that Netzach in Ezra 3:8 and 1 Chronicles 23:4 and 2 Chronicles 2:1 has the meaning to excel, to lead, to be head, to direct. He writes that while Menatzach might mean choir master, the force of the Lamed in Lamenatzach is unclear. Are the messages of the heading intended for the choir master? He argues that Netzach should be understood here as to excel, and thus from him who excels as poet and singer. Yes. That's it.
I admit,
So
I
you
feel
could,
it's
like,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, maybe you could translate it as for the soloist or something like that, the one who's the best in the group.
It does sound like I did classical voice for years. There are lots of little notes in the margins and indicated, there's allegro, notes to the conductor or notes to the soloist, and here, enter this, do that. I feel like it's hard to extrapolate what specifically those instructions would be because we don't have the context to know, but it's very normal for songs, especially songs being performed with choral arrangements or liturgical things, to have, exuent, stage left, character enter thing, kind of, or musical, faster here, louder here, softer here, call and response. Yeah, there's all kinds of things like that. It seems very natural to me. I just don't know what the specific instructions would mean.
So are we on Psalm 6 now?
No,
5.
5.
I thought Isaac read his.
No, Tomer just read. Aaron, keep up. Tomer just read Psalm 4, so now Isaac is going to read Psalm 5.
And Arn keeps telling me that I'm old.
You are. You're days older than me.
Yes, several.
All right.
Hey, Peter, quick question. Do you know how Discord works?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
I have my own.
I'll
I have
who
my
can
own
learn
server. I will have you know.
Wow. Oh my God, guys, he knows what a server is.
Yes.
I feel dug upon.
Bad day. Wait, where's my cane? I had a cane. Bad day.
Just when he thought he could catch me on something. I've been on your Discord server, Lawrence Yufa. You've never replied.
Yeah, I know, but I know you know how Discord works.
Okay.
All right, Isaac.
Yep. Let's go.
Someone
Well, the
went.
leader.
Someone left and tried to Google how Discord works. Lawrence, you notice?
Oh, look at the kitty. Who's the kitty? Who's that little kitty, precious? Oh, you're so snuggly. Yes, absolutely.
I want you to know
Yes!
I have a cane.
That is so much better.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's even better than that.
Okay, technically, those are not legal in Canada. Technically.
Okay, well now it's cool.
So I cannot legally procure one. Legally.
And look, it's Falcor.
I know. He's so cute. Ah! I'm just saying, swords are always welcome.
All right. Psalm 5 for the leader on Nechiloth. Psalm of David. Give ear to my speech, O Lord. Consider my utterance. Heed the sound of my cry, my King and God, for I pray to you. Hear my voice, O Lord, at daybreak. At daybreak I plead before you and wait. For you are not a God who desires wickedness. Evil cannot abide with you. Wanton men cannot endure in your sight. You detest all evildoers. You doom those who speak lies, murderous, deceitful men that the Lord abhors. But I, through your abundant love, enter into your house. I bow down in awe at your holy temple. O Lord, lead me along your righteous path. Because of my watchful foes, make your way straight before me. For there is no sincerity on their lips. Their heart is filled with malice. Their throat is an open grave. Their tongue slippery. Condemn them, O God. Let them fall by their own devices. Cast them out for their many crimes, for they defy you. But let all who take refuge in you rejoice, ever jubilant as you shelter them. And let those who love your name exult in you. For you surely bless the righteous man, O Lord, encompassing him with favor like a shield.
Huh.
Now we're moving on to 6.
No,
I mean, I appreciate that not a word from their mouth can be trusted. Their heart is filled with destruction. Their throat is an open grave. And that describes a fair number of people in a certain degree of power right now. And I appreciate the poetry of the phrasing. It is a perennial observation. Lawrence, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. I think that there's definitely some interesting stuff in here. So verse 3 was neat to me because God is again being thought of as a judge. But I think for me personally, I'm gonna be using this psalm a bit in my comparison with Psalm 14. So in verses 4 through 6, the wickedness spoken of is just that of the people who are not faithful. So you have the like in verse 5 there, the evildoers or the workers of iniquity, po'ale aven, right? And that phrase is also used a lot for this group. Verses 9 through 10, especially when there's like no truth in their mouths, their what's it say, their hearts are destruction, their throats are open graves, they flatter with their tongues. So yeah, those are the people who have rebelled against God, to put it lightly. And there's definitely a lot of common themes there with Psalm 14. But yeah, they flatter with their tongues. The people are hypocritical. They're hypocrites and liars. These enemies will be nice face to face, but they're ready to sell you out behind your back. So that is one of the traits that's recurring for the wicked. Then in verse 12, it's the last verse there. For you bless the righteous, O Lord, you cover them with favor as with a shield. So the wicked are put in contrast to the righteous here. So the righteous are blessed, while the enemies are to be cast out in verse 10. So while righteous are protected, the enemies of God are not. So I guess those are just my preliminary observations, but I will be using this psalm quite a bit in my analysis of Psalm 14.
Fair enough.
Okay, so the psalm is generally taken to be an individual complaint, though Craigie writes that in terms of Gunkel's sub-classification of the lament psalms, Psalms 5 should be classified as a psalm of innocence, though he writes that this classification may miss the main substance of the psalm. Instead, he takes it as a protective psalm, quote unquote, but writes that it is unclear if originally it was a cultic psalm on the basis of verses 4 and 8, which is 3 and 7 in the Old Testament. The dating of the psalm is uncertain. Telian asks if the psalm was destined to be sung at the first instant of dawn in concomitance with the preparation of a sacrifice of fruit. He writes that if so, then, quote, the poet is a king with priestly status or a cultic functionary of the sacerdotal rank, as we see in Exodus 27:21 and Leviticus 1:8 and 12. His main care was to affirm the marvel of his communion with God, end quote. Klaus writes that it is unclear if the temple mentioned in verse 8, which is 7, is the temple of Solomon or the temple of post-exilic times. Quoting from W. Bayerlin, he writes that we can assert, quote, that nothing in the text of the psalm precludes a provenance from the era of the pre-exilic Zion temple, end quote. And Gelstenberger writes, quote, unfortunately, the evidence in the Old Testament for judicial institutions affiliated with the sanctuary is lacking. 1 Kings 8:31 and 32, Numbers 5:11 through 28, Deuteronomy 17:8 through 13, and similar texts testify only that the ordeal was practiced in Israel. 1 Kings 8:37 and 38 seems to be a late retrospective and therefore hypothetical insertion. Exilic or post-exilic theologians, to whom the Solomonic temple was the center of life in every regard, viewed the sanctuary as the only place where the individual could ask for help and rehabilitation. In reality, particular services supported by primary groups and special cult officials, priests, men of God, and prophets, must have been conducted in many places through Israel's territory before the exile. If Psalms 5 is pre-exilic, then it has not been fixed in the central cult in Jerusalem. Verse 8 does not mention Mount Zion. Rather, it served as a prayer in a common ceremony of petition at any sanctuary in Israel for a person threatened by misfortune and ostracism. If, on the other hand, the language, especially of verses 2 and 3 and 12 and 13, should prove to be late exilic or post-exilic theological usage, then the psalm, because of the mention of sacrifices in verse 4, would have to be linked with the Jerusalem community.
And I got a comment here I want to read this. Street Psych says, will I try to debate Andrew Wilson from The Crucible? Even as a Christian, I find him to be the most arrogant piece of shit on the internet. I agree. And as I said in the chat, but I'll say it again here, his deplorable behavior in his debate with Matt Dillahunty was the reason why I quit Modern Day Debate for the second time, because they refused to moderate. Matt went in prepared to debate the topic, and this guy instead did not debate the topic. Instead, all he did was slander Arden, and that's it. Just personal attacks against trans people in general and her in specific. And there was nothing that modern day debate would do to stop that from happening, to have any decorum whatsoever. So he's a repugnant ass. He did not come to debate. He came to be a piece of shit. So there's no reason to platform him.
Agreed. And I think it's important to note that debates have long been a debate when it is engaged in good faith and moderated correctly as a debate can be an excellent tool of understanding, arena for ideas. Unfortunately, at the present time, the trend of arrogant assholes just using debate as a tool to push the most bullshit, hateful rhetoric has degraded the art entirely. There are very few places you can still go to have anything that could appropriately be called a debate. And the debate me bros have no respect for that actual art of communication and consideration and the way that that is set out.
Yeah,
So
I'm happy that I was on the debate circuit for a while.
Mhm.
I was happy to participate in that sort of thing, But you're right. There needs to be moderation. There needs to be some degree of good faith. It's supposed to be an intellectual process, but it's never going to be when you platform Nazis and flat earthers.
No, it's not. But there's a subtler thing underneath. I think Jordan Peterson is a good example of pseudo-intellectualism dressing up terrible ideas and bad faith in and tricking people into defending their right to free speech without any respect for what any of the things involved mean. If you are not fulfilling your responsibility to, you know, to engage in good faith, to bring forward on the debate, to follow the format, then you are not entitled to the right to debate. Responsibilities come first. And we've gotten further and further away from that over time, and we need to stop doing that. And sometimes, yeah, that just means going, no, I'm not, this is a dog and pony show, not an intellectual exercise. And I'm not going to pretend that what you're doing is either intelligent or true. So fuck off.
Street Psych 1 says, thanks for the reply. You're awesome, bro. Thank you. I just hope somebody puts Andrew in his place. Problem is his cult will still believe in him no matter what. Well, again, look at how cults act. They don't change their position. A delusion is defined as a persistent false belief that will not change even in the face of evidence to the contrary. So why platform someone who is determined never to change their minds and to ignore all the facts? And in this
It's a
case,
negative confirmation bias.
the argument was, I think, Christianity versus secularism, I think was the topic. And Matt brought an argument for secularism over Christianity. And this other guy did not prepare for the topic. He came to spread hate, and that's it. So why the fuck? Why is he celebrated anywhere?
It's kind of funny
By
because
anybody.
that is the definition of the wicked that we discussed in the first psalm and that will be continuing through this. People who lie, people who pretend to a virtue in order to just cover their ass and get like an ego boost out of it, but don't give a fuck about the truth or virtue or anything authentic or of genuine value. And I think this is honest people often have a blind spot where they will assume others are honest despite evidence to the contrary. And I think we need to take responsibility for the fact that we've got to cut that out. But also,
I'm guilty of that myself.
me too, 100%. I want to think the best of people. I really need to stop doing that. It's incredibly stupid. All the evidence indicates I should not be doing that. Alas, here we are. But I think deplatforming them, taking the air away from their bullshit performances, because it's also incredibly childish and narcissistic. Look at me, I want to debate. Not really, but it's childish, and it's the temper tantrum, and the person that the worst thing you can do to them is just and walk away and ignore them, because it takes all their power. And we need to start treating them like the ignorant, tantruming children that they are, and just tell them to fuck off and go to their room until they can behave like adults.
Biggest issue I have with debating people is how do we gain accountability? Because when you're on stage in front of an audience, that's one thing, but you're also you can't. It's just a performance, because you can say anything you want, and the opponent can't say that that's a lie if they're not immediately familiar with whatever site, what study you might have made up, and there's no kind of accountability. That's the frustrating thing. And with written debates, I find that I will ask a question, and if they ask me a question, I answer it. I see a question mark at the end. I don't know. I just feel obliged to answer the fucking question. But when I ask my opponent a question, an important question, they ignore it. I repeat the question, they ignore it. I repeat the question, they deflect, they distract, they whataboutisms, everything, but they won't answer the fucking question. They all go Pam Bondi Anybody see Pam Bondi when she's like refusing to answer any kind of question, every kind of deflection and distraction she could throw out? No
Oh,
accountability whatsoever.
I keep changing the channel because otherwise I'm going to scream until I vomit. She is so repulsive, and I can't wait until the history books get their claws into her, because there is nothing sufficiently terrible that it would be inappropriate to deal
Yeah.
with Pam Bondi or Christy
Is the
Noam, for that
Dow
matter.
is the Dow like at 42,000 or something today rather than
It dropped, yeah.
Yeah, it's at
Because-
$42,000.
Yeah, it's so, oh my god, this shit's so fucking dumb, because like when he was told by the Supreme Court, like, no, you can't do these tariffs, he was like, all right, I'll do other tariffs, and then the Dow dropped again. So it's so stupid.
Dumber than a bag of rocks.
Oh my god.
Oh my God. That
This
man, he is so stupid. And honestly, I think it's a testament to how much ignorance has been idolized in America, especially, that people have convinced themselves that he's somehow intelligent, because he's fucking not. Okay. And admittedly, I'm sure the cocaine didn't help. Okay. Funny side note. I was talking to my mom about Trump and about how fucked in the head he is. And she was like, when in the 80s, he talked about how his brother died of alcoholism. It was tragic. He couldn't stop it. It was this whole thing. And he said that he didn't drink because his brother had made him promise on his deathbed never to touch alcohol. And my mom said, it's possible. It's possible that he did in fact do that, because his brother only said not to drink, said nothing about snorting cocaine off a hooker.
There's a bit I want to share with you about a video about this guy that he's given up basing meth or whatever, and so I'll take a drink now. I'll do some toot, whatever. But I don't base unless it's
Yeah, unless it's Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll
Oh,
love it.
God.
I'll share that with you later.
I will enjoy that. Oh, I did want to say, one of the key points in debate that you actually taught me, Aaron, before we ever met, was the importance of defining your fucking terms. Because this has always bothered me, but I wasn't able to bring it into focus until you provided such clear and explicit definitions of the words you were using. I mean, evidence. What was that? I always used to be able to quote it. A series of verifiable facts that are either positively indicative of or exclusively concordant with one interpretation over any other. That's a definition. It means something. You can work with it. The people who work endlessly to obfuscate what a word means. You look at what they did to abortion. Abortion is the medical removal of tissue from the uterus. It could be the content. No, but they want to define it as murder because they want to be all dramatic and emotional. No, technically taking out if the sac doesn't come out, that could be considered an abortion at post-birth.
Yeah,
And nobody's dying.
I already know this, but my first moderated debate, I had already realized that in a lot of different written debates, the biggest problem is trying to define the words, because the creationists that I'm arguing against always use the wrong definition and also do not define their position. They have the position, what evolution is distorted to mean in their church congregations, which they never bring up when they're talking to me, because they're talking about one individual thing giving birth to a completely unrelated thing, like a cornstalk growing hamsters was an example that Kent Hovind came up with, or an elephant giving birth to a pine tree was another example that he came up with, right? Obviously, that's not evolution. So in my first moderated debate, I put up a series of definitions just so that we don't talk past each other. My opponent refused to engage in the debate if the terms are spelled out as they are in science, because he said, let's just leave the terms undefined and let the audience decide what they think these words should mean, which means that he is depending on equivocation and misdirection and straw man misrepresentation. He knows that he depends on that. He cannot argue what it actually is.
Which is pretty fucked up and clearly indicative of dishonesty. But I also found with a lot of lies, with a lot of absurdities, and a lot of things that people don't realize are deceitful because they've believed them for so long and they've just sort of absorbed them. Asking a question about the clear definition of a word, if they are honest, it will make them stop and think. If they are dishonest, it will make them have a tantrum. But either way, they will show you who they are, and then you can proceed accordingly. And do not fucking waste your time with the liars. There's no point.
So, are we on 6 yet?
No, because I have one more comment on this Psalms 5.
Will you quit holding up the show, Tomer?
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that. So my only comment is on the title, which is 1 for pipes. In Hebrew, it's El HaNechilot. The word nechilot is a hapax, and its exact meaning is unclear. Some understood nechilot from the word nachala, which means inheritance. Thus, Septuagint reads, over her that inherits, and Vulgate, for her that obtaineth the inheritance. And Midrash Psalms, this, however, is rejected by Rashi, who writes that the psalm does not talk about inheritance. He writes that nechilot could be interpreted as troops from nachil, and thus the psalm is a prayer concerning the bands of the enemies that come upon Israel, and the psalmist recited the psalm on behalf of all Israel. This interpretation is also given by Hai Gaon, as cited by Kimchi. Menachem Saruk suggested that nechilot is a type of instrument, a rabbinic favored by Kimchi and modern commentators, who generally take nechilot as a type of flute. Craigie renders to flute music and writes that nechilot might be related to chalil, flute or pipe. He writes that flutes were used in the music of Israel's worship, and Mowinkle has noted the association between flutes and laments in Babylonian psalmody. Likewise, Krauss renders for flute accompaniment, Terrian on the mellifluous flutes. Mellifluous flutes, sorry.
Mellifluous. I have a
Mellifluous
articulated
flute.
python named Mellifluous.
Of course you do.
Dulcet mellifluous euphonious.
Halot renders played on the flute, but also notes against sickness disease, conjecturing necholot. That's it.
Okay.
All
I
right.
will move on to 6 then.
Yes. Take these bitches down.
O Lord, rebuke me not in thine anger,
I'm
neither
sorry, sir.
chasten me in thy
Sir.
hot displeasure.
Did you miss something?
Yes, you did miss something.
Yeah.
Oh, do you
title.
have
The
the title
The title.
for the director
title
of
of the song.
music with stringed instruments, a Psalm of David, according to Sheminith?
The fuck is she
Oh,
talking about?
Oh my god.
In the Hebrew
What-
Bible, it's the first verse, but I guess
Yes.
What version are you reading, Aaron?
Oh, I'm King James.
wait, it doesn't have.
Psalms, it's for the poetry.
Doesn't that one start with, "Oh Lord, don't you buy me a
Thomas
Mercedes
allergic.
Benz"? It's what the grifters use
What
to
am I
get you.
missing, Lauren?
There is a title.
So-
Wait a minute. There is a title.
Oh,
It just doesn't have that. It just doesn't have that. King James
Gotcha.
doesn't have that for some reason.
Okay.
Go on.
Yeah, I read it. It's for the director of music with stringed instruments, a Psalm of
That's
David.
fucking
And
weird.
there's a term that nobody knows, which is probably literary or musical.
I will.
Sheminith.
I will.
I grabbed this. I chose this version just because it would be silly.
Yeah.
I
Understood.
fully approve.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But okay, you can
All right.
go ahead. Keep reading the worst translation there.
It's
Sorry.
just coincidental or curious, or maybe it was intentional that Lawrence starts criticizing me as I read the words, "Neither chasten me in thy hot displeasure." Have mercy upon me, O Lord, for I am weak. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are vexed. My soul is also sore vexed. But thou, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord, deliver my soul. Oh, save me for thy mercy's sake. For in death there is no remembrance of thee. In the grave, who shall give thee thanks? I am weary with my groaning. All the night I make my bed to swim. He wets his bed. I water my couch with my tears. Mine eye is consumed because of grief. It waxeth old because of all mine enemies. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity, for the Lord hath heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord hath heard my supplication. The Lord will receive my prayer. Let all mine enemies be ashamed and sore vexed. Let them return and be ashamed suddenly.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
love reading meaningless dribble as if it's also important.
I'm honest. I just it strikes me as we go through these because these are supposed to be written by or for King David or the kings. It's a very patriarchal, hierarchical, ooh, big man. And they just sound like save me, daddy, big daddy, come save me. I'm like,
Yeah,
what is it about hierarchical alpha patriarchy bullshit that is so like such a submissive bitch to the big daddy you want to come save you?
this is generally taken to be a psalm of sickness.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, it's very clear that the psalmist believes that he's like close to death.
Yeah.
Like you have the reference to Sheol, right?
Mhm.
But I also think, hold on, where is it? Yeah, in verse 8, yeah, depart from me, all you workers of evil or iniquity, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. So while healing makes sense, I think that the reference there to Po'ale Avin uh, would give it a more of like, he's fearing for his life because of that. And I'm not sure if workers of iniquity there could be like, thought of as like, the way people think of demons, right? Like causing illness and stuff, which I suppose is a possibility. um, but the the couple notes I had was that in verse 5 there, yeah, for in death there is no remembrance of you, and Sheol, who can give you praise? To me, this lends credence to the idea that there is no experience in Sheol, which is likely just the grave. No actual like afterlife is commonly thought of is to be seen here, or I should say, is commonly thought of today. Um, in verse 8, of course, you get the God coming to save the psalmist, and he drives away those workers of iniquity. And I guess I'm sure we can get into that. But it says in the commentary for in the study Bible, that the particular form of evil is not indicated. So that is the usual phrase for the wicked. Um, so I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, so commentators generally classify Psalm 6 as a psalm of sickness, with Gustenberger writing that there is little doubt that this psalm was a genuine prayer for individuals who suffered serious trouble, possibly an incurable disease, as we see in verses 3 and 7, which is 2 and 6, and Psalms 38. Krauss writes that the psalm is not completely uniform in its metrical form, but the 3 plus 3 meter is ascertainable in most verses. He also writes that it is hardly possible, quote unquote, to date the psalm, but its presence as a prayer formulary in the temple cult in Jerusalem permits pre-exilic composition as possible. Though he writes that a dependence on the book of Jeremiah can hardly be maintained, Terian argues that there are many affinities of Psalm 6 with the Jeremianic oracles and traditions, such as verse 2 with Jeremiah 10:24, 15 through 18, verse 3b with Jeremiah 17:14, and verse 6 with Jeremiah 13:17, etc. And thus, quote, Jeremiah and his disciples or friends were the borrowers rather than the inspirers, end quote. He argues that the prophet who knew the Psalms intimately easily asked Yahweh in the language of this complaint of the psalm not to bring him immediately to naught. He writes that both the psalmist and the prophet faced the high functionaries of the kingdom of Judah in its decline, and both reacted strongly against the political syncretism under Manasseh after Josiah's death. Craigie, however, cautions with formulating a hypothesis concerning the interrelationships between the psalm and the other psalms or literature such as Jeremiah. And on the title, according to the Sheminith, the word Sheminith appears in the titles of Psalms 6 and 12, and its meaning is unclear. Septuagint reads over the eighth and Vulgate for the octave, because a Sheminith is derived from Shmone. Several midrashim like Pesikta Rabbati 21 and Targum took the Sheminith to be a harp of 8 strings, deriving Sheminith from Shmone. This meaning is favored by Rashi, Hameiri, and Kraus. Ibn Ezra wrote that Sheminith refers to a song that had 8 tunes, and that the psalm should be sung on the 8th mode. This meaning is favored by Terian, who writes that it is somewhat similar to the Gregorian chant. Craigie favors reading octave, comparing with 1 Chronicles 15:21. He writes that the implication may be that the musical accompaniment should be on a lower or bass octave, which would be appropriate to the solemn theme of the psalm. Hallett notes Mowinkle's opinion that the term played a part in the autumnal New Year festival as the 8th and concluding ceremony, which immediately preceded the answer of Yahweh and his promise. Gunkel and Begrich suggested amending to Hashimronit, from the name of the Canaanite city of Shimron, as we see in Joshua 11:1 in 1915, but Hallett takes it as unlikely or even impossible.
My Unfinished Journey says, Ra, 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 hail Aaron and Co., and chastening in hot displeasure. And by the way,
Kinky.
this is mellifluous.
Mellifluous. Who's a pretty snake?
Yes.
Who's a pretty snake? Who's a pretty danger noodle?
Yeah. Okay, you may continue, Tomer.
Yeah, I'm done.
Well, you cannot continue then.
No, I can't. How can you continue when you stop?
All right. So I suppose that is my turn for Psalm 7.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, sound less excited for it.
No, not really.
So
Which verse are you reading?
Which version am I reading?
Yeah.
The
The
NRSV. you mean?
correct one.
Yeah, one that isn't the KJV.
Oh, Lawrence just wants to be all proper.
Yep, that's true. A shigayon of David, which he sang to the Lord concerning Cush, a Benjaminite. O Lord my God, in you I take refuge. Save me from all my pursuers, and deliver me. Or, like a lion, they will tear me apart. They will drag me away, with no one to rescue. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there is wrong in my hands, if I have repaid my ally with harm or plundered my foe without cause, then let the enemy pursue and overtake me, trample my life to the ground, and lay my soul in the dust. Selah. Rise up, O Lord, in your anger. Lift yourself up against the fury of my enemies. Awake, O my God. You have appointed a judgment. Let the assembly of the peoples be gathered around you, and over it take your seat on high. The Lord judges the peoples. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, and according to the integrity that is in me. Oh, let the evil of the wicked come to an end, but establish the righteous. You who test the minds and hearts, O righteous God. God is my shield, who saves the upright in heart. God is a righteous judge, and a God who has indignation every day. If one does not repent, God will whet his sword. He has bent and strung his bow. He has prepared his deadly weapons, making his arrows fiery shafts. He should get that checked out. See how they conceive evil and are pregnant with mischief and bring forth lies. They make a pit, digging it out, and fall into the hole that they have made. Their mischief returns upon their own heads, and on their own heads their violence descends. I will give to the Lord the thanks due to his righteousness, and sing praise to the name of the Lord, the Most High. Now, I do have a few things to say
First
about
of all, they're pregnant with mischief, or was it the mischief that got them pregnant?
this. A little column A, little column B.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean,
do
if
have-
you're doing it right.
Right, yeah. So for verse 2, yeah, like a lion, they will tear me apart. So obviously the enemies are, again, pursuing him, and the petitioner is afraid for his life here. And then in verses 3 through 4, if the petitioner is guilty of harming someone, then he believes he deserves to be brutalized by his enemies. But the fact that he's praying for deliverance shows that he doesn't think he's wronged anyone in any way. But the judgment is
It's a witch hunt.
oh right, yeah. Uh,
Fake
the
news.
yeah, but the judgment is ultimately in God's hands. Verses 7 through 11 there, where they're talking about the assembly of the peoples be gathered around you, and over it take your seat on high. The Lord judges the people. So but God is again here viewed as a judge seated over the assembly of the people, and this is essentially the psalmist's defense speech.
Yeah.
In verses 12 through 13, the one where it has all the weapons imagery, he's again envisioned as a war god, and this happens all throughout the Bible. We've already seen it so many times. It's going to happen more. It doesn't really stop, but yeah, war and storm god, and this is obviously the war imagery here.
Oh yeah.
So verse 15 is where I had a bit more stuff to say. So they make a pit, digging it out, and fall into the hole that they have made. So there's an interesting parallel in Proverbs 26 to 28. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. That's in verse 27. But verse 26 says that the enemies will be exposed in the assembly, which parallels this court defense here in Psalm 7. There's also a reference to lying tongues and flattering mouths, which is seen in Psalm 5. But the opponents are the same here. They may try to destroy the faithful, but their acts will eventually bite them in the ass. And then I also made a cross reference to Ecclesiastes 10:8 as well.
Hmm.
But you can kind of see how it all blends together.
Yeah, the refrain is very familiar, calling down curses on yourself. We just had this with Job. If I had done this or that, then of course I would deserve this, or then I should be smited down by the mighty smiter. Blah, blah, blah. It's but it's very common in this era. You call down curses on yourself in the name of the gods by invoking their power to prove that you are speaking honestly. I swear by this god, and then the idea being, if you swore incorrectly by them, they would smite you because you insulted them and took their name in vain. You've involved their honor and you're lying. So yeah, it's how much anyone believed that was what actually happened, I don't know, but the mode of speech and the attitude and ideas behind it are very common, and you do see a lot of this in, well, all through the Bible, but you definitely see a lot of it in the Psalms when they're looking at times where the psalmist feels unjustly oppressed.
Okay, so
Do we have commentary?
yeah, the commentary, yes. Gelstenberger takes Psalm 7 to be a protestation of innocence, quote unquote, designed for persons whose guiltlessness was beyond doubt. Likewise, Craigie writes that the psalm is an innocent man, quote, an innocent man's prayer for protection in the face of the false accusations of enemies, end quote. Krauss notes that the textual and metrical circumstances are marked by some unevennesses, with difficulties in respect to the text transmission occur especially in verses 5, 6, 8, 11, and 12. He notes that in verses 5, 6, and 8, we encounter half verses that cannot be coordinated. He writes that we may read verses 13 through 17 as double triple meters, and additionally verses 2, 4, 5, 6a, 7, 11, Verses 1, 3, and 12 are to be taken in the meter 4 plus 3, and the meter 3 plus 2 is to be established in verse 8, with the exception of Yehovah Yadin Amim. Terrier notes that Jeremiah also appealed to the just judge in Jeremiah 11:20, and he based his certitude on the divine faculty of sounding in depths, hears, and lions, as we see Jeremiah 17:10. Terrien, however, writes that it is difficult to determine who was the initiator of these notions. Krauss dates the psalm to pre-exilic times. He writes that the psalm presupposes the institution of the court of God, into which one who is accused and persecuted by enemies has come to receive the verdict of Yahweh. This Sitz im Leben leads us to the area of the
Sitz im Leben.
temple. Sitz im Leben, yeah, that's German. Leads us to the area of the temple of Jerusalem. The petitioner is persecuted by the adversaries, fleeing to the sanctuary, affirming his innocence, and appeals to Yahweh as the righteous judge. This cultic situation is described in 1 Kings 8:31 forward. Krauss further writes, quote, "We would have to assume that the most diverse petitioners at various times entered into this act of God's judgment, and they will have used Psalm 7 as their formulary. When Gunkel in his commentary presumes to be able to determine, quote, that in it echo the words of the king, end quote, we have to remember that the prayer formularies adopt conceptions and metaphors that transcend every individual destiny. The chronological connections can be arrived at only by deduction. The prayer song probably originated in pre-exilic times. In many ways, it gives the impression of being archaic, and it can be dated very early."
I mean, it can be.
On the title, now I have two comments on the title. So on the Shigayon of David, the word Shigayon appears only here only here and in Habakkuk 3:1 in the plural form Shigyonot, and its etymology and exact meaning are unknown. Septuagint reads, "a psalm pertaining to David." Some have derived Shigayon from the root shaga, to go astray or reel. Thus, Vulgate reads, "for the ignorance of David," and Terrian writes that it signifies that the poem should be read with passionate extravagances of posture and speech. According to Midrash Psalms 7:3, Shigayon is taken from shki'ah, impulsive speech. And so this was a song David sung on impulse concerning Saul. Targum reads, "a loud song of thanksgiving of David," using the word targuma to indicate speaking aloud or shouting, in the context of the translation, quote unquote, being read aloud what has been read out in a low voice. Rashi derived shigayon from mishga, error, and writes that this was an, quote, "an error that David sang to the Lord because he had erred in saying to God to deliver him into the hands of his enemies on account of Saul, who was slain because of him," end quote. He also notes that Menachem Saruk took shigayon to be a type of instrument, a reading favored by Kimchi and Hameiri. Ibn Ezra wrote that the reference is to a tune of a poem that started with the word shigayon. Craigie notes that Mowinkle offered that the word is related to Akkadian shegu, Psalm of Lamentation. This meaning is also favored by Krauss, who writes that the meaning agitated lament is thought of. Halot notes that some took shigayon from shaga, to stagger, and thus meaning staggering verse, which could be the song of an ecstatic. Alternatively, it could be taken from Arabic saja, to stimulate to great excitement. Thus, shigayon would be a song which provoked great excitement by its performance. They conclude, however, quote, "an assessment of these questions show that it is not possible to make a clear distinction between the effect of deriving it from Akkadian, or from Hebrew, or from Arabic. And so whatever meaning for the substitution is preferred, it should not be regarded as certain. Linguistic arguments tend to give more support to 2b, I think it's the Hebrew one, but there are no contextual references to make the proposal definite in either Psalm 7 or Habakkuk 3.
We got
And-
another comment from my unfinished sock, who says, "Don't be a lamenting bitch. Like and share the stream instead. Waves to my adoring fans."
Oh, it's fair though. I enjoy the fact that we can be dramatic bitches about this, not just because it's fun, but technically, the directions in the text said we have to. It's the only way to be authentic. I need more lipstick. Someone to do really dramatic eyes. I'll bring a scarf next time and I don't know, emote.
Right.
Oh, and finally, wait, was it? Yes. The Cush, a Benjaminite. Hebrew, it's Cush Benyamini. We have no other knowledge about this Cush in the Bible. Chazal in Talmud Moed Katan 16b and Midrash Psalm 7:18 take Cush as a reference to Saul and write that, quote, just as a Cushite has unusual skin, so did Saul have unusual deeds, end quote. Compare Rashi, Kimchi, and Targum, which reads, because he uttered the song about the misfortune of Saul, the son of Kish, who was from the tribe of Benjamin, end quote. Others took Cush as referring to Saul's beauty, just like the Cushite woman in Numbers 12:1, according to Hameiri. Ibn Ezra, however, rejects that Cush refers to Saul and writes that Cush was a Jew from the Benjaminites. Ditrani wrote that Cush was a great man close to Saul who came from Benjamin and was an adversary to David. Craigie writes that David experienced opposition from the Benjaminites, both during Saul's lifetime and afterward, as seen in 1 Samuel 24 through 26, 2 Samuel 16:5, and 21. He writes, quote, if the title has historical value, and there was an incident with Cush, the account may have been contained in the ancient and no longer extant historical sources named in 1 Chronicles 29:29. In general, the obscurity of the incident tends to support both its antiquity and its authenticity. Thus, while there can be no historical certainty, it may be reasonable to suppose that the psalm reflects David's reaction to false charges laid against him, in the presence of Saul perhaps, purporting that he had acted treacherously and in defiance of treaty obligations, end quote. Krauss rejects that the psalm refers to the narrative of 1 Samuel 18:21 forward, and writes that the writer of the note has in mind an occurrence not transmitted in the Old Testament, with Gunkel suggesting an unknown legend.
How can you be an unknown and a legend at the same time?
Well, we do have preserved legends, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm done here.
All right. So I think that's where we should stop for today for a couple of reasons. One, I gotta go to work soon. Yeah, I know, right? And two, Psalm 8 has a lot of theological stuff that I wanted to cover, and I didn't get a chance to fully complete it. So I have some commentary on it, but not as much as I want. I want to go into the difference between hod and kavod.
Got a question then. I understand, Tomer, you said are you not available this coming Saturday?
Yes. Unfortunately, I have a party to attend to.
Okay. Well, the less we know about that, the better. When then should we meet? Are we going to do another one this week? Are we waiting till like a week from today?
No, I think next week because I need to prepare.
Yeah. I have most stuff. Right now, I have commentaries written through through Psalm 12, but I do want to expand a bit on Psalm 8.
For next week, I could do Wednesday or Thursday.
I think
Wednesday's good.
For me. Wednesday is good for me as well.
Okay, Wednesday then.
Wednesday works.
All right.
Yeah, Wednesday should be fine. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'll put it up for Wednesday.
All right.
All right, and with nothing more to say,
definitely I have more to say. I gotta say, join the Discord, the one true Discord. That is, of course, the Behold Network Discord.
Behold!
behold.
Behold, indeed, motherfuckers. So
And join the Discord if you want to listen to my newly released songs.
dude, Tomer, we want people to join, not leave.
Honestly, people like my songs. Why are you being such a salty salmon?
It's
I never
optional.
listened
It's
to any of them.
optional.
Boys, you're both pretty. Now,
That's I guess that's the important stuff.
it is.
No,
Well,
there
I
is
look
something
forward-
that is a little bit more important even. Elira just sent 50 more Aron-Ra memberships.
Alira!
Why?
Wow.
Why?
Okay. Mary Alira.
That's
Right.
amazing.
It is.
We did a lot of chapters this week. Surprise for us.
Hey, it's Psalms.
Yeah, fortunately, they're short enough. Hey, you would cut out right before I get to read another one. But next week, we shall read more. I'll
Mhm.
try and find a flowy top.
Tomer, say it. Call it.
Yeah, what?
Call it.
Call what? What?
You
goodnight,
you
Gracie.
have to say goodbye.
Buy good.
Night, Grace.